Mr. Browne, your reaction to the cut in interest rate from 0.75 to 0.25. Good morning to you.
Well, hopefully this will be a massive reassurance to the industry, to the markets, that actually the authorities are on their side. We actually did a hearing with Mark Carney last week, and we asked him, as the Treasury Select Committee, we asked him exactly this question: would he do an emergency cut in interest rates? He wasn't thinking about it then, but the markets have been in turmoil in this last week. And what it does show is that basically all the authorities are on side on this, of trying to make sure we get through this coronavirus outbreak with the minimal disruption to the economy possible.
If you would, Mr. Browne, explain to my listeners what it is hoped this will bring about, in simple terms.
Okay, what it does do is it reduces the cost of borrowing for companies. It makes it cheaper for them to take out loans to invest. If they've got loans already, it reduces their payments on a weekly or monthly basis, and it gives confidence to those companies that do have loans. And that means that they know that they can sort of carry on trading with more confidence, that they'll have greater income and fewer outgoing costs.
Let's talk about companies, let's talk about smaller companies, and let's talk about the possibility of some kind of business rate relief. Mr. Browne, what are you hearing about later today regarding that?
Well, you're obviously asking about the budget here.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and so I don't know the details of the budget. I would certainly call on the Chancellor to think about small businesses. He has said he's going to do everything possible to make sure that small businesses do get through it. It is particularly difficult for small businesses, as you imply. They don't have most of them don't have the reserves. If they lose business for 3 months, they're going to find it very difficult. So I know he's thinking about it, but we'll have to wait to see what actually happens. But business rate relief, as you say, is an obvious thing to do.
One newspaper, the Daily Mail, talks of a £600 billion boost for Britain's infrastructure. Is that correct? Is it something you would support? You sit on the Treasury Select Committee.
Absolutely. I mean, so one of the big themes of this budget is delivering on a manifesto commitments. We were just elected back in December, and a big part of that was delivering on infrastructure. As you know, Boris the Prime Minister is very keen on infrastructure. I actually worked for him when he was Mayor of London, and we developed a lot of infrastructure.
He loves buses and bridges, that man.
He does like infrastructure. I know it's a big personal interest of his. And indeed, 600 billion, that's what we're expecting, a tripling of spending, and it'll be the highest level since the 1950s.
Can we afford it?
Government borrowing is at record lows at the moment. It's extraordinarily cheap for the government to borrow money at the moment. And so if you're ever going to spend on infrastructure, then now is the time to do it. As a country, we've tended to underspend for decades. You see that often.
Some of our railways, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you see it, and so we clearly need to do it. It's also part of the whole levelling up agenda. I mean, I represent a seat in the south of the country, but I've got all these colleagues from the north of England now, and voters across the north of England have voted Conservative. There's a certain expectation there. We certainly do need to level up. As a country, we've got one of the biggest regional variations in GDP. Like the differences between the rich areas and the poor areas is far greater than any other G7 country and almost any other developed country. But we are a single country. We need to make sure we're all on the same train economically, as it were, that we're all going in the same direction. And a key way of doing that is infrastructure spending.
Lastly, your MP for the good folk of South Cambridgeshire, are you concerned you could be a super spreader, Mr. Browne?
Well, I'm taking all the precautions that we're advised to take, and we are very much following scientific and medical advice on this from the Chief Medical Officer, who's become a bit of a TV celebrity now, washing my hands absolutely regularly, trying to avoid shaking hands unless absolutely necessary. But obviously, you're referring to a case now that we've had.
Yes,
Nadine
poor
Dorries,
Nadine. Yes,
must wish her well. She's actually WhatsApping at the moment, so she is on the up. She's definitely getting
even on the app. She's on the app. She's on the up on the app.
She's on the up on the app. She's feeling an awful lot better, which is fantastic news. And I think Parliament should carry on. Right. The next question you're going to ask me is, should we close down Parliament? I think Parliament should carry on for as long as possible. We set the tone for the rest of the country, but whether we need to take other measures, I wait advice from the medical authorities.